Fellow workers, 'tis well for us to be here. Over 100 years ago, men gathered to discuss the vital questions and fought together for a principle that won for us our civil liberty. 40 years ago, men gathered to discuss a growing evil under the old flag, and later fought side by side until chattel slavery was abolished. But by the wiping out of this black stain upon our country, another great crime, wage slavery, was fastened upon our people. I stand on this platform ashamed of the conditions existing in this country. I refused to go to England and lecture only a few days ago because I was ashamed, first of all, to make the conditions existing here known to the world, and second, because my services were needed here. I shall tell you some things tonight that are awful to contemplate, but perhaps it is best that you know of them. They may arouse your lethargy if there is any manhood, womanhood, or love of country left in you. Some months ago, the President of the United Mine Workers, John Mitchell, asked me to take a look into the condition of the men in the mines of West Virginia. I went. I would get a gathering of miners in the darkness of night upon the mountainside. I would listen to their tale of woe and try to encourage them. But I did not dare to sleep in one of those miners' houses. If I did, the poor man would be called to the office in the morning and would be discharged for sheltering old Mother Jones. Well, the men in this district of West Virginia asked for more wages. They were refused. A strike was called. A few days later, that awful wholesale murdering in the quiet little mining camp of Stanford took place. I know those people were law-abiding citizens, and their shooting by United States deputy marshals was an atrocious and cold-blooded murder. After the crimes had been committed, the marshals, the murderers, were banqueting in the swellest hotel in Pennsylvania. You have no idea of the awfulness of that wholesale murder. Before daylight broke in the morning, in that quiet little mining camp, deputies and special officers went into the homes, shot the men down in their beds, and all because 36 or 7 miners wanted to try to persuade the others who were forced by the authorities to break the miners' strike. By stepping on property loaded down with injunctions, they were arrested on the spot, but resisted arrest and went home finally without being taken to jail. And then they were found murdered in cold blood the next morning. I hate your political parties, you Republicans and Democrats. I once asked a man in prison how he happened to be there, and he said he had stolen a pair of shoes. I told him if he had stolen a railroad, he would be a United States Senator now. I want you to deny, if you can, what I'm going to say. You want an office and must necessarily get into the ring and fight. You must do what that ring says, and if you don't, you won't be elected. Take this man who's running for mayor of your beautiful city. Oh, he may be all right. He prays a great deal. But I wonder, would you like shaking hands with me if I robbed you? He builds parks to make his workmen contented. But a contented workman is no good. All progress stops in the contented man. I'm for agitation. It's the greater factor for progress. Well, I see a lot of society women in the audience today, and I can walk down the aisle and pick every one of you out. You probably think I'm crazy, but I know you. And you're society dudes, poor creatures. You wear high collars to support your jaw and keep your befuddled brains from oozing out of your mouths. You society folks, and the commercial cannibalism is reaching into the cradle, pulling girls into the factory to be ruined, pulling children into the factory to be destroyed. You who are doing it all in the name of Christianity, you are at home nursing your poodle dogs. It's high time you got out and worked for humanity. Christianity will take care of itself. I started in a factory. I have travelled through miles and miles of factory, and there is not an inch of ground under that flag that isn't stained with the blood of children. Ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to finally be here with you in Seattle. Please forgive the late arrival. My peace train was detained in Tukwila due to an orange alert. After I was thoroughly searched and interrogated, I inquired as to what it was that made me such a public menace. It was then I was duly informed that anyone with a name like Roosevelt, travelling on a peace train to Seattle, and with a copy of the Constitution in her handbag, fit the profile of a suspected terrorist. I was not entirely surprised to be harassed by your security agents. You see, I take immense pride in having had one of the largest FBI files in American history. My friends, you might remember it has been more than 40 years since I departed from this beautiful earth. I have returned because of the unprecedented threats to your civil liberties and to world peace, and I am determined to carry my urgent message to the cities and towns throughout America. My heart goes out to you in this time of unprecedented danger to your world. One of the greatest dangers your nation faces is to succumb to blind and paralyzing fear. In such a condition, I have seen decent, fair-minded Americans act in barbaric ways towards their fellow Americans. We must never forget the national hysteria which forced hundreds of thousands of Japanese Americans into internment camps during World War II, and the same kind of fear gave rise to the madness of McCarthyism in the 1950s. I am here to tell you that the very foundation of democracy, your sacred Bill of Rights, is dangerously threatened in the name of security. In the final analysis, a democratic government represents the sum total of the courage and the integrity of its people to make their leaders accountable to them. In 1918, I went to the battlefields and hospitals during World War I. This experience imbued me with an intractable hatred for war, and I became a lifelong activist for peace. The horrible suffering and carnage World War I inflicted on all its participants compelled me to work with those determined to prevent such violence from happening again. And so I enthusiastically backed the League of Nations and the World Court. My friends, if you want peace, the United Nations must be allowed to serve its original purpose to prevent war. The International Court, which is disregarded by your current leaders, must hold all leaders accountable to international law. It is my fervent hope that these two pillars of peace will be fully realized in your time. February 15th, 2003. Millions of people around the world marched on seven continents and established the peace movement as the new superpower. I am heartened by this invincible movement to seek peace by other means than war. In the nuclear age, there is a moral imperative for mankind to finally understand that we are brothers and sisters in one world. These times now call for mankind as a whole to rise to great heights. For it isn't enough to talk of peace. One must believe in it. And it isn't enough to believe in it. One must work at it. Remember, my friends, I am always with you in your great quest for universal peace and justice. And now I must be off to a place called Yakima. Goodbye, my friends. Carry on your great work. Goodbye.